Real spiritual warfare. Sunday rolled around, and Nick was genuinely excited about going to church. He was intrigued by a church that one of his friends, Carlos, attended. From the outside, it looked like any other large community church, but on the inside, it was different. It was not only lively with young people dancing, waving Christian flags, and praising God, but you could feel a real love and concern for everyone, even the homeless. Not just in word, but also in action. The service was already in full swing, and Nick was enjoying it when he noticed 3 men talking across the sanctuary. Their voices were unusually loud for a church setting, and it caught his attention. He recognized 2 of them as church leaders. The 3rd man looked like a vagrant. Nick tried to refocus on the service, but his eyes kept drifting back to the group. A few minutes later, about a dozen men, including the vagrant, moved to the end of a pew and began walking slowly down the aisle toward the altar. Suddenly, the vagrant collapsed to all 4s on the floor. 2 of the churchmen reached under his arms and helped him to his feet. They continued moving forward, but again the man went limp and fell to the floor. When he came to, he let out a blood-curdling squeal that sent chills down Nick's spine. Nick had attended church faithfully until he was 17 years old, and he had never seen anything like this. The churchmen gathered around and began praying fervently. The vagrant lowered his head, seemingly cooperative, while the pastor stood at the pulpit and asked the entire congregation to join in prayer. As the man tried to stand again, several of the men pulled him back to his knees and held him there. Nick bowed his head, but peeked through his fingers, unable to look away. The man was no longer a willing participant. He struggled, trying to break free. This continued for 5, 10, then 30 minutes. Most of the congregation simply sat and watched. The pastor climbed slowly to his feet, tears streaming down his face. With urgency in his voice, he pleaded, "This man's life is hanging in the balance. He is possessed and needs to be set free. Pray, pray, and don't stop praying." Nick was frightened, but he didn't dare disobey. He bowed his head and prayed for a few minutes, then continued observing, his head still low in reverence. More than an hour passed. The vagrant was no longer resisting. He seemed subdued. The men surrounding him continued to pray passionately, some drenched in sweat, but none showing signs of quitting. Carlos stepped away from the group and walked over to Nick. "We're not breaking through," he whispered. "Do you want to join us?" Nick hesitated. He was afraid. He didn't feel like he was close enough to God. He believed in God's power, but he wasn't entirely sure about what he was witnessing. Should someone be restrained, even if the intention was spiritual deliverance? "Thank you," Nick replied quietly. "But I think I'll stay here and keep praying from my seat." More time passed. People in the pews began shifting restlessly. Then the pastor rose again, even slower this time, his face solemn. "We're almost there," he said, "but we need everyone's prayers. Please, pray." Everyone bowed their heads, including the older children, and began to pray. The men around the vagrant were nearly shouting their prayers now. Then, something shifted. Nick felt it in his spirit. The atmosphere changed. The man began convulsing violently. Nick panicked. "Oh my God, he's dying." He froze, unsure of what to do. The convulsions were intense. The man screamed, and the others struggled to hold him down. More men joined the circle to help. Suddenly, the vagrant lurched upward with near superhuman strength, letting out a piercing scream as he nearly broke free. But the men wrestled him back down and kept praying. Then, just like that, it stopped. The man went limp. Everything became still and quiet. Nick held his breath. Is he dead? He couldn't see clearly. Most of the men were now standing, their backs blocking Nick's view. Then, hands began to rise into the air. A wave of praise broke out. Smiles spread, tears flowed, and joy filled the sanctuary. The music swelled, and the room erupted into celebration. People were dancing, clapping, singing, and praising God. Nick still wasn't sure exactly what had happened, but he felt it. Something had lifted. The heaviness was gone. He could now see the vagrant. He was standing, smiling, embraced by the men who had prayed with him. One by one, they gave him brotherly hugs. The pastor motioned for the music to stop, then addressed the congregation. This man came in lost, addicted, and on his way to hell. But tonight he accepted Jesus as his Lord and Savior. He's been set free from drugs, and now he's on his way to heaven. Then the pastor turned to the man and asked if he wanted to say anything. With tears streaming down his face, the man spoke into the microphone. I came in hooked on crack, high and hating who I had become. But something happened. I couldn't stop crying. It made me realize I needed God. I accepted Christ as my Savior. And I feel great. I feel like a new man. The sanctuary erupted again. Praise and joy filled every corner. This is a real story from author Jeffery S. Nichols' book, Deceptive Reality. It is available on Amazon.